OpenAI to acquire Windsurf. OpenAI acquires IO from Jony Ive. OpenAI acquires Alex, the AI agent for Xcode. Vijay Raji to become CTO of applications with acquisition of Statsig. What the hell is going on? Why is OpenAI acquiring so many companies? I thought startups were supposed to be acquired, not do the acquiring like they are now. It's kind of insane to see. But there are some very good reasons why OpenAI would want to acquire these businesses. Obviously, there's a strategic advantage to each of these acquisitions, but more importantly, the way that they'll complement the team at OpenAI actually makes a ton of sense. I am surprised we're not seeing more startups doing this type of thing. So, yeah, let's break down the recent spree of acquisitions at OpenAI and try to figure out what's going on. I was already going to do this video when I saw Vijay was joining from Statsig, but immediately afterwards, the Alex team announced that they're joining OpenAI, and I'll admit I'm kicking myself on this one. I was like this close to investing in these guys and just didn't respond to emails fast enough before the round closed. I could have had equity in OpenAI finally, and you guys could have accused me of more biases. I have nothing to gain from this one other than maybe another broken arm if somebody from Anthropic doesn't like me. But yeah, let's dive in. Sadly, I'm not being acquired, so someone's got to pay our bills. Quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll break down what the hell is going on here. I'm going to be real with you guys. I always thought AI voice stuff was pretty overrated. I type really fast and I don't like talking to my computer. Well, I didn't until this happened. All of a sudden, I hate using any application that doesn't have a voice mode. And what I've learned is that there's tons of other users, the majority of users even, that feel the same way. For most people, voice is 2 to 3 times faster than typing, and that's why so many people prefer it. But do you support it in your app today? Even if users want it, it's not easy to set up and get right. All of the details from handling the latency to using a smart enough model to having a good back and forth with the AI with all the right context and information, it's obnoxious to get right. Which is why today's sponsor, Vappy, is so cool. They've built the best platform for doing voice-based AI agents. These guys have done over 62 million calls, because their platform lets you just put a phone number in and send an AI agent to call someone, answer questions, and save the data in your database. It's so cool. Let's take a look at setting this up in TypeScript, creating a voice agent. You install their package. They even have a little button. You set up the client. You then create an assistant. In this case, we call it Customer Support Assistant. We describe the model we want to use. 4.0 is actually still really good for this because of the latency and characteristics for voice stuff. You then give it a system message. You choose a voice from any of the many different voice providers, and then you put in a first message. Cool, awesome. What happens when you want to actually use another person on the other end, like via a phone number? Well, that's even easier. Once you set up your assistant, you pass the ID in, you give a phone number ID, which is the ID for the phone number you're calling from, and then you put in the customer's number. And that's it. You just call vappy.calls.create, and now your agent that you already defined can call a customer, ask and answer questions, and log all of this in their dashboard or in your actual product, because again, this is just TypeScript code. You can put this in your own TypeScript server and save the data wherever you want to. If you don't have a way for people to use your service via the phone, you're missing out on tons of customers. Fix that now at soydev.link/Vappy. So OpenAI can't stop buying companies. Let's do a quick list of the ones that are relevant here. We've talked about a few. Obviously Windsurf, which failed spectacularly, by the way. IO/Jony Ive, Weird State, also a thing I covered before. We'll do an overview still, so don't feel like you have to have seen that video, but if you want more details on that one, we can do it. Then Statsig, and then Alex, the Xcode agentic coding tool. So let's start with Windsurf real quick. This one failed because Windsurf is a VS Code fork, and as far as we understand, due to the agreement where Microsoft gets all the IP that OpenAI has until AGI is achieved, that would mean everything Windsurf has done, all of the training data Windsurf's collected, and everything else that Windsurf is, would now be owned by Microsoft, or not owned in the traditional sense, but they would have the rights to all of that, and they could just integrate everything Windsurf has done directly into VS Code, thereby meaningfully harming the value of that acquisition. That is still a rumor as to why the acquisition failed, but it is one that makes a lot of sense, so I've chosen to roll with it. The IO and Jony Ive one has been weird because another company named IO is suing them over it, so they've had to be quiet and take down a lot of their messaging around it. This acquisition happened because OpenAI is more and more trying to be a product company, not just a model lab. And if they want to make really good product, especially if they want to make really good hardware, they want to have the best hardware people in the world. And since they have a recent raise of $40 billion at a $300 billion valuation, they have the liquid to make some stupid bets, like the Jony Ive bet. And if you think about a bet like that, I forgot how much it was. I think it was like $1 or so. Would you give up a 40th of your runway, a 40th of your chance to succeed to significantly increase the likelihood that you win in hardware? I would. I don't think I would hire Jony Ive today for many prices. I don't know how good he would be today, but he is one of the smartest and most talented designers in all of history. And if you have the opportunity to grab him and you believe he could meaningfully impact the likelihood you succeed, 1/40 is a reasonable ratio to take for that. But those are the ones we already know about. What I want to talk about today are these new two guys, the Statsig acquisition and the Alex acquisition, because these ones are much more interesting. They're both smaller businesses, so less big of a deal than the other two in that sense. But I think they indicate a shifting of how people are thinking at OpenAI. And that shift is something that is very much worth noting. To get there, though, we need to talk about a couple things. First, I want to talk a little bit about hiring, in particular about team structure. There are a lot of different ways to structure your teams. Let's say we have various products at our company. We'll say that we have, we have a mobile chat app. We have a desktop chat app. We have a deep research platform. We have a bunch of developer tools, codecs, etc. There are pieces below this layer that all of them are using, like GPT-5. There's going to be a piece that's at the bottom of a lot of these. GPT-5 needs to run on some infra. This infra is probably being reused across all of these. This part makes sense to abstract or even service out, but there are other things in here that matter. Like on the mobile app, you're going to have your, your design system. You also probably have to have different features like background management, notification systems, stuff like that. You also have to realize that your mobile chat app's probably not just one chat app. You probably have an iOS app and an Android app. And these are going to have a lot of the same pieces. And then with developer tools, you'll have the CLI, the web interface, all that. With the desktop app, you'll still have a design system. Deep research platform, you're going to have a lot of weird API definitions and whatnot. The reason I'm structuring this way is I want to showcase the surface area that given products and teams work on. If we start here from the bottom up, there seems to be a pretty clear set of lines to draw. You can draw a line here, and the people below this line are the infra team. You can draw another line not far above and say this is the research lab. You could draw another line above here and say this is design and UX team. And this is the way a lot of companies split things up. And I would argue that especially from the research lab point down, that makes a ton of sense. From that point upwards, though, it stops making sense relatively quick because you probably don't want the same design system for iOS, Android, and the desktop app. You might want some overlap between these things, but you don't want them to be the same. And if I'm working on the Android app and the design that you gave me is based on the iOS app and it won't work in Android, now a person who's not on my team is blocking me from doing this thing, and that sucks. So a lot of companies have realized this and changed how they structure from a certain point. And they will instead do vertical slices for these different application surface areas. So different products at a company like OpenAI might be split like this, where everyone's sharing the research and the infra provided by those teams. But on top of that, you have vertical slices. You have a team working on the Android app. You have a team working on the iOS app. You have a team working on the desktop app. You have a team working on deep research, a team working on codecs. And maybe the codecs team is split into multiple teams for the different surface areas for codecs. More and more companies are starting to move towards this vertical split. Facebook, for example, is an early pioneer of this, where the teams were split based on the surface that they owned rather than the layer of the infra that they manage. This is the vertical versus horizontal slicing of teams thing. So let's say that initially the codecs team started as part of the desktop chat app. They were just building things and features and GitHub integrations in the desktop chat. And then they realized, oh shit, this is different enough that it needs its own product surface area. We need to break this out and make it its own thing. Or maybe priorities change internally because they see all of the hype that Claude Code is getting, and they're like, okay, we need to invest more here. All of the engineers who are on these things are busy doing these things. They can't just reallocate engineers somewhere else and expect everything else to keep going. What they need to do is form another team to do this part. And that team is going to have a lot of similar roles and similar people doing similar stuff to what you have over here, but it's a different product and it has different timelines, different goals, different customers, different everything. So you need to build that team up. The problem is if you hire 5 random people that are similar enough to the 5 people you had over here, there's no guarantee that they understand how each other work. There's no guarantee that they'll work together well at all. There's no guarantee that they're actually any good until you've worked with them for a while. So what you end up having to do is you take some random leader or person who's near a leadership role from this side, you move 1 to 3 people over, and now this team has to hire to fill all of the empty spots, and this team has to hire to fill the people they just lost in this transition over. And that just kind of sucks. It's really hard to spin up new verticals teams like this at a company at a certain size because each of the teams is going to need the people on it. But if they don't give up any people in these shifts, what ends up happening is too little oversight, too little cohesion, and ultimately often disaster. So how do we balance it out? There's a couple things that we need. First, we need a good balance of ICs and management. So we need people who are good at individual contribution. That's what I see as people who are writing code, who are making changes directly, and people who can manage those people and run the ship and make sure things are going in the right direction. We need the right amount of vision, intentionally vaguely defined, because vision's a hard thing to put words into. It's people who understand who you're building for, what you're building, and what direction you're moving in. You obviously need quality people, because if you don't have high quality people, you're screwed. And the biggest thing by far is an aligned team. This doesn't just mean the team is aligned with the company. It can also mean that the individuals on the team are aligned with each other. I've been on a team that was really effective that I didn't fit on. And I've been on a team that wasn't effective that I fit great on. It's an entirely different dimension, how well the team works together. But it's also a really hard thing to figure out. And if this team has never worked together before, it can take months to figure out. So this part is expensive to figure out. The quality people part's just as expensive to figure out, because if you hire someone that you think's good, it turns out they're not, good luck getting rid of them. It's not that easy to fire, and even if it is, you're still months in and potentially ruining a life as they have to go figure out how to get a new job. Ugh, not fun. The right amount of vision part, that one's extraordinarily tough to suss out during interviews. And the good balance of ICs and management is also really hard to hire for. Some things are easy to hire for, some things aren't. You're going to hire the people who are the easiest to hire first, because that's how it goes. Those will usually be individual contributors. So you might end up with a team that has 8 developers and 0 managers. So now you're clawing at random teams trying to find someone who's down to manage them. That might not be a good manager, and you end up in disaster really fast. So why are we talking about all of this? What does this have to do with hiring? Well, what if I told you there was a shortcut that can make it much less likely you have problems with these 4 pieces? If there was a way to get a group of people that were well balanced, already aligned, and more likely than not to be high quality, you would probably say I'm bullshitting, and to some extent I am. And there's one last piece I want to talk about here. The different types of people. There are ICs, the individual contributors. These are people who, given a task, can complete the task well. That is the majority of people, and that's a good thing. We need more people to do this than anything else. Even with all the fancy AI tools, what those do is they make an IC slightly to meaningfully more effective, between 20% and 3 times more efficient, perhaps. But then we have management. Management steers the ICs. It's the role of management to make sure that the work of the ICs is being done, that the work is moving in the right direction, and that every IC is taken care of well and understands what's going on. They take the directive from the company and they work with the individual contributors to steer the ship and make sure we're going in the right direction. But then there's a third category. I hate this term, but I don't know anything else to use. Visionary. Oh, God, I hate it. I'm just going to call it product lead. Yeah, the terms either don't describe it well at all or are really pretentious and dumb. The product lead, or the visionary, whatever the fuck you want to call them, they're the one who sets the destination. They say, we're going to go here. The management pushes back, makes suggestions, asks for changes, and then once everything's agreed upon, brings the plan to the ICs who then execute down the path. There's also technical leadership and all these other things. None of that matters on an executive level. Tech leadership is a concern that exists between management and ICs. Is not a concern that exists here. And this is the space we care about. You guys have all experienced the gap in the pieces between the management and the ICs. You know what that all is like. That's not what we're talking about here. This is the part that I care about. The relationship between the people who figure out what we're going to do and propose it with the people who actually steer the ship and guide the ICs in the right direction is really, really important. This is a relationship that can often make or break a company. To be fair, if this relationship is bad, it will also break the company. But I would argue being a not shit manager isn't too hard to do as someone who's done it a lot and has managed surprisingly large teams with lots of people. Management is largely a listening role. And if you get good at listening and good at like steering, it's not too hard to do well enough. Getting the relationship between these parts right is significantly harder and really, really high risk, especially if you're not sure the person in this position is particularly good. There is one category of person that fits this really well. An example of an IC would be someone like Zoham, the guy who worked at 20 YC companies at the same time. All he did was close tickets, never proposed or did anything unique, just did what he had to. Another example of this would be Claude Code. You give them a task and they do it. Examples of really good management would be somebody like Daniel Rosenwasser. If you're not already familiar with Daniel, fucking love this guy. He's mostly in charge of the TypeScript team over at Microsoft. He's also been doing more and more with the VS Code guys. His ability to bridge the gap between the mission of the company, the interest of the user, and the engineers actually working on those things is unbelievable. He is so good at balancing all of that. He is an exceptional example of traditional management, where he's not necessarily setting the direction, but he is making sure everything executes properly so we can go in that right direction. And then for the product lead, this is going to be a very developer-focused example. I'm going to pick Tanner Lindsley. If you're somehow not familiar with Tanner, you clearly don't watch much of my content. Tanner is the creator of TanStack, which includes React Query, React Table, the craziness that is the new TanStack Start and TanStack Router stuff he's doing. He's very, very, very good. One of my favorite developers and largely responsible for me being relevant in this whole space in the first place. Love Tanner so much. He doesn't do things the way he is expected to, supposed to, much less told to. He's always had a vision for the way he wants to do his stuff technically. He'll be inspired by something he sees, propose his own way of doing it, and before anybody can even tell him no, he's halfway done. Tanner also is an ungodly good IC. Like, he can just sit there and write the code, but he'll only do it if it's his idea. He can also steer the ship really well because he runs these small teams that build these things. But once the team gets big enough, it frustrates him for sure. I would definitely put him in this category. But to be in this category, you have to be a bit of the other things too, which is an important point to take away here. But this is a unique breed. This is something that you can't really just skill up on. I believe most people, given the effort, could become a good manager or could become a good IC. I have not seen people who are bad at this become good at this. I've seen people who are bad at management get good at it. I've seen people who are bad at code get good at it. I've never seen somebody who's bad at direction setting, bad at leadership and vision, so to speak, get good at that part. This is a different thing. It's really hard to find. It's really hard to filter. It's really hard to measure. And it's really bad if you fuck this part up. So what does this have to do with the acquisition spree? What if I told you there's a category of person that fits here relatively often? Category is good founders. To be clear, for every good founder, there are 10 plus bad ones. But it's easy to tell a good company from a bad one, much more so than to tell a good manager from a bad one with a 1-hour interview. If I get to spend an hour with 3 management candidates and I have to figure out which one is good, I can do an okay job at that. If I have to spend an hour with 3 product leaders that are visionaries that are going to steer us in the right direction, an hour is not enough for me to figure that out. But if I go use 3 of their products, then I can see quite a bit more. And that's what's so cool here. There is no good way to, in an hour, suss out someone's capability. But if they've already built something, you can see a lot. So if you're using a product like maybe Statsig, a very successful data platform that's used by everybody from OpenAI to Anthropic, which is particularly funny because now all of Anthropic's analytics data is technically owned by OpenAI. Fun aside, we'll get to in a bit. If you are a heavy user of this product and you feel like it is well aligned with you, your way of thinking and what you're doing, that's a really good signal. So if you're a user of a product, you feel like it's evolving in the right direction and it's still largely founder-led, there's a good chance that those founders are the types of product leads and visionaries that you're looking for. And that's the big bet that OpenAI is making. If they are acquiring companies that are building products that they're already using, there's a good chance that the leadership defining those products and directions has good alignment with how OpenAI wants to do things. But there's an even more important detail, because they're not just acquiring the founders. They're certainly not just acquiring the product. Obviously, one, they get the product, and two, they get the founders. But most importantly, they get the whole team. Remember that bit above here where we're talking about how hard it is to structure teams based on specific product verticals and how when a new vertical happens, it's expensive to start staffing that up and it's high risk? I've seen so many companies absolutely fuck themselves with this problem. I'll be frank, I'm watching Vercel do it right now. It's so hard once you have a new thing people are excited about to not screw yourself because everybody wants to move over and then all the other products they worked on before start to rot. This happened at Twitch like 8 times when I was there. It's so common. So if you acquire a company that's making a good product in a space similar enough to what you're doing, you get to just buy all of the alignment. You get to skip all of those steps. You have a team of people that already work well together, and you know that can come in and do things their way. So now let's think about the state of OpenAI. Back here, all of these surfaces were under the same product leadership at OpenAI. They had a CTO and a CPO that were in charge of product. And the Android app, the iOS app, the desktop app, and the deep research platform, and all the other cool things they build were all under the same higher up leadership, as they probably should be, because all of these products should be very well aligned. What about the developer tools? How much does the roadmap for Codex actually need to understand and impact the roadmap for the Android app? Why would these ever compete for resources? If you have the money, why would you let these things take away from each other? It makes no fucking sense to do that. And OpenAI knows that. So the fact that one executive was in charge of all of this, the entire product surface area, was stupid. And they knew that. So they needed new leadership that could do product leadership on the other product, this new vertical that was growing really fast, the developer tool side. But honestly, they don't just need that. They need good technical leadership on the other side as well. They need technical people who can understand the vision of the developer tool side, but they also need capable people that are technical enough to lead the product and application side too. Do you know what category of person deeply understands the technical aspects of product and application development? An analytics wizard. They understand product better than almost anybody because they know every layer at which the product succeeds and fails. Acquiring Statsig because they are deeply invested in good product on a technical level makes a ton of sense. And that's why they brought in Vijay to take over as CTO of applications. That's not CTO of OpenAI. That's CTO of everything other than the models and probably also the developer tools and API. So now Vijay, whose tools are already being used for the analytics for all of the application surface area at OpenAI, who has the tooling built and implemented already to understand what isn't working in the product, is now in charge of leading the technical direction for those things. It makes a ton of sense. Oh, fun. Apparently Vijay is taking over both ChatGPT and Codex. I will predict now if Codex goes well, there will be a split there soon. I would imagine that those will be different enough that they have to split, but both of these together are different enough from the infra that the current CTO just wants nothing to do with it. And it makes a ton of sense to spin up separate leadership for this. Having a separate CEO, CTO, and general executive board and leadership for the product side, entirely isolated from the research, labs, infra, models, and all of that, makes all the sense in the world. Because if you're a CTO and you're stuck figuring out why the ChatGPT app can't be updated because Apple's being shitty, and why NVIDIA is taking so long to ship your GPUs, you can't do either of those effectively. And I would imagine, again, if Codex does well enough, they're going to have to do a similar split there as well. And for what it's worth, the CEO of applications, Fiji, was also a poach. But she was poached as the CEO of Instacart. Deep understanding of good applications and product stuff, also from the Y Combinator circle, which OpenAI is very tied to. She came in as the CEO of product, but she needed someone technical to be directly beside her to run all of this and figure out what could or couldn't be done and how to do it. They could have found a random person at the company, ripped them from their role and forced them into this. Or they could go with a partner that they already have, buy them with the insane amount of money they have in the bank, and have a known, trusted leader in the space come in with an outside perspective and a lot of focus to solve these problems. Once the acquisition is finalized, Statsig employees will become OpenAI employees. It will continue operating independently and serving its customer base out of its Seattle office. We'll take a measured approach to any future integration, ensuring continuity for current customers and enabling the team to stay focused on what they do best. Sure, I have a bad feeling Statsig is going to fail, and knowing how petty Anthropic is, they're already moving off. I know how this goes. And then there's Alex. Once again, with all the surface areas within Codex, between the CLI, editor integrations, and VS Code extensions, the web platform, the background agents, the models, there's so much Codex that it's hard to keep track of. I was just joking that they have 7 products named Codex, and I was wrong. There's like 9. It's insane. Alex is a really cool tool. It is an attempt to unfuck the Apple developer experience, because if you ever used Xcode, you understand just how fucking bad that whole ecosystem is. And their attempt to embrace AI has been laughably bad. The only thing worse than Apple Intelligence is Xcode's Copilot alternative. It's so bad. And Alex was an attempt to automate and agentify as much of the Xcode integration experience as possible. So you're probably looking at this and thinking, oh, so OpenAI wants to make it so you can vibe code iOS apps. I'm sure that's part of their goal here, but that's not the reason this acquisition happened. This acquisition happened because the Alex team showed they could build complex agentic code tool integrations with systems that suck. If you can make Xcode a viable platform for agentic coding, you can unfuck the Codex website. I would say they're probably similarly hard because the Codex website is just so bad. I covered it recently. It's a mess in so many stupid ways. It has a ton of promise, but it's an absolute shit show right now. So if you're looking for developers that already work well together cohesively, don't necessarily have a ton of vision, because Alex doesn't take a lot of vision to build. The vision is Xcode sucks at this. We're going to fix it. And they did it. They can execute. They have the IC and management section down. And if I had known that, I would have pushed way harder to invest. They have this section down. And this section needs a lot of help, because that Codex team is a skeleton crew where every person's responsible for 3 separate big products. Now they have a team of people that already know how to work together, that are building really complex agentic integrations, that are ready to hit the ground running, and they'll probably be shipping PRs their first day. I know how these acquisitions go. This is going to work really well. They are skipping so many steps by getting developers that already understand the space, already integrate really complex, obnoxious systems with AI, and most importantly, that know how to work together. You don't have to try and force a culture onto a new set of people, hoping that they'll mesh together if they already work together. You just have to skip all of these steps. And funny enough, the original Codex CLI implementation came from a friend of mine. And if you're not familiar with him, he had made a startup that I was really excited about way back with another one of my old friends, Indent. Indent was actually a really cool product when they were building it. The goal of Indent was to make it easier to manage approval processes. So if somebody on support needed access to a document that might not be something they immediately have approval for, a push notification would be sent to whoever owns it, where they can approve or deny, to have a human in the loop for approving things throughout chains. People who built this are all security wizards, but also really into product developer tools, integrations, and all of that. I know these guys from my old hackathon crew, really, really smart devs. I went to their announcement party when they originally dropped Indent, which was really fun time, 4 or 5 years ago, I think. They got acquired by OpenAI 2 years ago. When they were acquired by OpenAI, they were folded into security to build new approval pipelines for their stuff. But Fuad in particular had other aspirations. He was always a bit of a wild card and definitely wasn't the best fit for the safety team at a company like OpenAI, and eventually ended up just kind of building Codex because he wanted it, and he did it. And then they shipped it. And now Codex is a whole platform at the company. He went through hell to get it to happen and to make it ship, and rebuilding the same app twice, once in TypeScript and once in Rust. He's been through it. But he came through a different acquisition. And even though him and Dan worked great together, they ended up splitting because Dan wanted to focus on safety and security stuff, and Fuad wanted to go build developer tools. But this team of talented people came in through an acquisition of an aligned product. One of them broke off and effectively formed this whole new Codex team, or whatever you want to call it, realized, oh shit, we don't have enough people to fill this team up. And now they are acquiring companies to fill the remaining holes here. This whole product exists because they acquired the right people, the right visionaries, and now they have to fill the hole. They could go hire a whole bunch of people the traditional way and hope that they'll work together well, or they can do the thing that got them here in the first place, buy a company that's well aligned. I hope this is helpful to some of you guys as you see these acquisitions go through. And now if you eventually see us get acquired by OpenAI, you understand why. Actually, though, there's no world in which OpenAI can really buy us. The YouTube channel makes too much money for me to just give it up, but too little money to be part of the acquisition process. So we're in a fun spot with companies like this that would want me to stop doing YouTube. So instead, we make our money off sponsors and we build really good product, and you guys pay for T3 chat, which works really well for us. Yeah. That said, hi, Sam. If you want some really good product leadership and to unfuck ChatGPT, and you're willing to either let me keep my channel running the way I currently run it or pay us accordingly, you have my phone number. That's all I got for this one. I need to go ice this wrist before I have 2 broken arms. Yeah. It's been a fun one. Let me know what you guys think. And until next time, peace, nerds.